Clean up and get out. Don't stand there dirtying my floor. One sentence was all it took to unravel a buried past. A black financial genius, disguised as a janitor, returns to the very bank that erased his name from history, seeking a debt no one dared to touch. But what happens when he doesn't just uncover the truth? He wields the power to make the entire system collapse on itself. Who will be exposed? Who will rise with him? And can the truth alone rewrite an industry built on lies and injustice? Or will it ignite a fire that burns it all down? Stay until the end. The twist will redefine what redemption truly means. Welcome to Unveiled Wealth, where hidden truths are unveiled, one silent layer at a time. Let's begin. Teresifon. Malik pushed his mop across the bank's lobby, the bucket's wheels squeaking as he moved. His cap sat low, navy jumpsuit loose, his steps deliberate. Invisible, surrendatory. That's what they wanted. Geraldine C. de Senior Surius Surniversum. Wallace, senior risk officer, stormed past, her stilettos clicking sharp. Once you're done, get lost, she snapped, loud enough for tellers to glance up. You're smudging my floor, janitor. Her voice dripped venom, her name tag glinting as she turned away. Malik didn't answer. His jaw clenched, the scar above his brow twitching a silent vow etched in every muscle. He dipped the mop, water splashing hard. Smudge, wintertornatumandum. Smudging, smudge, every insult, every sneer, every erasure. Each stroke was a count, each splash a memory. Geraldine's name burned in his mind. Her signature was on the 2016 foreclosure logs, the ones that left families like his on the street, their lives packed into cardboard. He shifted to the next tile, eyes catching Carl Prescott, VP of Lending, punching elevator codes 7 to 429, careless. Carl smirked at a teller, muttering, "Keep the quotas up, or you're out like the last one." The teller flinched, her hands trembling over a loan file. Malik's grip tightened, the mop's handle creaking. He remembered. Geraldine's voice echoed again down the hall, sharp as a blade. "You one new girl push that loan through, or you're done." A young teller, barely 20, froze, her eyes wide with fear, her fingers fumbling with a stack of papers. Malik's chest burned. Another victim of their greed. Another life they'd ruin. 8 years ago, he'd stood in Carl's office, a tailored suit on his back, pitching a risk model to save First Capital from collapse. They laughed. "Stick to code, kid," they said, their cufflinks glinting, their sneers louder than his data. Then they erased his name when his model proved right. Now he was back, not as Malik Carter, Forbes 30 under 30, but as the janitor, the ghost, the blade. By noon, Malik had mapped the lobby's blind spots cameras, missing the northeast corner, where interns whispered about cooked books. He caught break room chatter managers joking. Equity reports too dirty for the janitor to clean. One laughed, tossing a coffee cup into Malik's bin without a glance. Malik paused, his mop still. A drop of water hit the floor, spreading toward Carl's office door. He watched it stain the tile. Truth doesn't stay buried. Not when the man who built their system walks their halls, mop in hand, ready to cut. Malik pushed his mop down the hallway of First Capital Bank. His movements were steady, deliberate. Each stroke hid his intent. He wasn't just cleaning. He was watching, listening. Every whisper, every lie, every betrayal. He saw it all. Bryce, the senior VP, stood near the teller desks, his voice sharp. "You missed your quota, Amara." Again. Amara, a junior teller, shrank back. Her hands trembled as she clutched a stack of papers. "I tried, sir." The system, it rejected. Bryce cut her off. "Excuses don't pay bonuses. Sell those bonds to Mrs. Carter. I don't care if she's 80 and half blind. Do it." Amara's eyes dropped. She nodded once, her lips tight. Malik's grip on the mop tightened. He saw the injustice. He felt it. Bryce leaned closer, his tone a hiss. "Fail again, and you're done. I'll make sure HR knows you're a liability." Amara's breath caught. Her fingers shook harder. Malik's eyes narrowed. He wouldn't forget this. Bryce turned away or smirking and walked toward his office. Malik followed at a distance, pretending to clean a spot near the door. A false start. He needed to hear more. Inside, Bryce picked up his phone. "Yeah, Carl. The loan default numbers? Hide them. Push them to next quarter. No one's looking." Malik's jaw clenched. Bank corruption. 1 right there. He slid his phone from his pocket, hit record, and angled it toward the crack in the door. Bryce's voice carried smug, careless. If the board asked, blame the DEI hires. Like Amara, she's an easy target. The recording captured every word. Malik stopped mopping, but he didn't stop listening. Bryce laughed. Low and cruel. She'll be gone by next month. We'll replace her with someone who knows their place. Malik's blood boiled. Every word, every sneer, every plot. He saved the recording, his hands steady but his mind racing. He stepped back, pretending to adjust his card. He needed more. Down the hall, Carl, another VP, gathered with Grant near the coffee machine. Malik moved closer, wiping a counter no one had touched. Amara's a liability, Carl said, his tone cold. DEI hire, no skills. Just here for the optics. Grant laughed, sipping his coffee. She'll crack soon? Then we'll take her bonus. Split it between us. Malik's fingers tightened on the rag. Every lie, every lie, every lie fueled him. He snapped a photo of the two men, their grins wide, their greed louder than their words. Another piece of evidence, another step toward whistleblower justice. Carl leaned in, his voice a whisper. I've already doctored her performance reports. She won't even see it coming. Grant nodded, his smirk growing. Good to worm. More for us. Malik's heart pounded. He stepped back, pretending to adjust his cart, but his camera stayed on. He wouldn't let this go. Carl turned, his eyes narrowing at Amara across the room. She's done, he muttered. Grant chuckled. Can't wait to see her face. The lobby buzzed with clients. Malik moved to the edge of the crowd, his mop a silent shield. A woman approached the loan desk, her voice shaking. I need an extension. I try to get a children's fund watcher. My son, he's sick. I can't pay this month. Grant stood behind the desk, his arms crossed. No extensions. Pay now or lose the house. The woman's eyes filled with tears. Her son, a small boy, clutched her hand. Please, she begged. Grant leaned forward, his voice a sneer. Rules are rules. Next door, shush, sir. The woman turned away, her shoulders slumped, her son trailing behind. Malik's chest burned. He followed them to the door, pretending to sweep. He whispered, I'll help you. Wait for me after hours. She nodded, her eyes desperate but grateful. Malik turned back, but his mind was already racing. Grant called after her, loud enough for everyone to hear. Don't come back unless you have cash. The crowd murmured. Malik's grip on the mop tightened. He wouldn't let this slide. He moved closer to the desk, pretending to clean a smudge. Grant smirked at a coworker. These people, always begging. Back near the teller desks, Amara stood with Mrs. Carter, the elderly client Bryce had targeted. These bonds, they'll grow your savings, Amara said, her voice hollow. Mrs. Carter adjusted her glasses, her hands shaky. Are you sure, dear, I don't understand these things? Amara hesitated. Her eyes darted to Bryce's office. He was watching. She forced a smile. Yes, I'm sure. Malik saw the lie in her eyes. He saw the financial fraud unfolding. He stepped closer, adjusting his mop, and activated his phone's camera. The lens caught Amara's trembling hands as she handed Mrs. Carter the papers. It caught Bryce's approving nod from across the room. Evidence. More evidence. Mrs. Carter signed, her hands shaking harder. Amara's face burned with shame. Malik's camera clicked again. He wouldn't let this go unpunished. Bryce stepped out of his office, his voice loud. Good work, Amara. Keep going. We need more like her. Amara's eyes reddened. She turned away, hiding her face. The day stretched on. Malik stayed invisible, but his presence grew heavier with every injustice he witnessed. Carl called Amara to his desk later that afternoon. You're on thin ice, he said, loud enough for the whole floor to hear. One more mistake and you're out. I don't care what HR says. Amara's face burned red. She nodded, her hands clasped tight. Malik stood nearby, wiping a counter. He didn't look up, but he saw everything. Every insult, every threat, every moment of corporate greed. He slid his phone out again, recording Carl's voice, capturing Amara's hunched shoulders. The evidence piled up. Carl smirked, leaning back in his chair. You're replaceable, Amara. Don't forget that. A coworker nearby snickered. Amara's eyes dropped to the floor. Malik's recording kept running. He stepped back, the mop still in his hands, but his heart roared with a fire that wouldn't die. Near the end of his shift, Malik overheard Grant on a call in the break room. Yeah, Shelby and I were skimming the bonuses. No one checks the junior accounts. Easy money. Malik paused mid-step, his mop still. He pretended to adjust his earbuds, but his phone was already recording. Grant laughed, oblivious. By the time they notice, we'll be long gone. Malik's heart pounded. Another piece of the puzzle? Another thread to pull. Grant hung up, then turned to Shelby, who was nearby. We'll hit Amar's account next. She won't even notice. Shelby nodded, her smile cold. Perfect. Put coroner. Let's do it tomorrow. Malik's camera caught their faces, their words, their plans. He stepped away, his silence a weapon. Shelby turned to Grant, her voice low. What about the new teller? Jay, he's asking questions. Grant shrugged. Scare him off. He'll learn to stay quiet. Malik moved to the employee lounge, where a group of tellers whispered near the vending machine. He lingered, pretending to clean a table. One teller, Jay, spoke low. They're targeting Amara because she's new. Bryce said she's the reason we're behind on targets. Another teller, a woman named Lisa, shook her head. It's not her. They're hiding something. I saw Bryce shredding papers last week. Malik's ears perked up. He stepped closer, wiping the same spot again. Jay lowered his voice. I heard Carl talking about a client lawsuit. They're covering it up. Lisa nodded, her eyes wide. They'll blame us if it gets out. Malik's phone was already recording. Every secret, every cover-up, every piece of bank corruption. He wouldn't let them bury the truth. The clock ticked closer to closing. Malik slipped into the back office, where a shared computer sat unattended. He glanced around, no one. He logged in with a stolen admin password he'd seen Carl use weeks ago. A build snap moment. He expected a simple login, but what he found was worse. Emails between Bryce and Shelby. One subject line, Client X, foreclosure fraud. Malik's hands froze. He opened it. Bryce had written, push the foreclosure through. Client X won't fight back. We'll take the property. Shelby replied, done. Funds redirected to offshore account. Malik's heart raced. Financial fraud. On a scale he hadn't imagined. He downloaded the emails, his fingers trembling. He slipped a second USB into the server. A backup plan no one would see coming. He logged out, his silence heavier than ever. Malik stepped back into the hallway, his mind racing. 6 injustices, 6 pieces of evidence. Bryce's orders, Carl's threats, Grant's theft, Shelby's fraud, the client's tears, the teller's fears. He had it all, but he needed more. He needed to be undeniable. He glanced at his phone, the recordings, photos, and emails glowing on the screen. This wasn't just a fight for him. It was a fight for Amara, for the clients, the solicitor, for the tellers, for justice for all. He slipped the phone back into his pocket, his movements steady, his silence powerful. The system was cracking, and he held the hammer. He wouldn't stop until it shattered. Elsie, the new intern, stood at the copy machine, her hands shaking as she fed a client file through the scanner. The air smelled of toner and burnt coffee. The machine's hum barely covering her whispered, this isn't right. She'd overheard a manager pressuring a teller to push a toxic bond on a retiree, a widow, 78, whose savings were all she had. Elsie's pen hovered over the file, then scratched a warning, high risk. Don't sign. She slipped it into the folder, her heart pounding like a drum. Malik was nearby, wiping a water fountain, his cap low, his movements slow as a predator's. He saw everything the tremble in Elsie's fingers, the glance over her shoulder, the manager's shadow crossing the hall. By 4 p.m. Marsmanto. The manager, Yvette, caught the note. She tore it to shred, her voice slicing through the cubicle maze. Stick to coffee runs, kid, or you're done by Friday. Elsie froze, her face pale, the scraps of paper fluttering to the floor like ash. Yvette leaned closer, her voice a hiss. You think you're a hero? You're nothing here. Elsie's hands clenched, her nails digging into her palms, her breath shallow. She wouldn't back down. Malik waited until the hallway emptied, the bank's fluorescent lights buzzing overhead. He moved to Elsie's desk, his mop gliding silently. Under her keyboard, he slid a folded post-it backup camera logs. Server B, folder 17, check 342p, Memprenenmon. No signature. The ink was faint, smudged from his gloved hand. He stepped back, his shadow blending with the marble's gleam. At 5:15, Elsie found the note, her eyes darting across the lobby. The janitor was there, mopping in slow arcs, his face hidden. She frowned, her fingers tightening around the paper. Was it a tech guy? A prank? She thought it was a mistake until she saw the janitor glance her way, his eyes sharp, knowing. Her breath caught. She tucked the note into her pocket, her steps quick toward the server room. The clock ticked. The cameras didn't blink. Malik knew what she'd find in folder 17 footage of Yvette shredding the note, her voice clear on the audio, admitting the bond's risk to a colleague. Proof of coercion, time-stamped. He'd planted the seed, subtle as a whisper, sharp as a blade. Let Elsie think it was a coworker. Let her dig. The truth would claw its way out, and he'd be there, mopping, watching, waiting. He moved toward the break room, where another teller whispered to a colleague, "Yvette's hiding something. I saw her with Bryce." Malik's ears perked up, his mop slowing. Another thread to pull. His mop paused, water pooling at his feet. The reflection showed Elsie slipping the note into her bag, her steps quick toward the server room. Malik's lips didn't move, but his eyes burned. The system was built to hide. He was built to expose. The mop's rhythm faded, replaced by the clack of keyboards in Malik's memory. 8 years ago, a dorm room, the air thick with instant noodle steam, his mother's voice crackling through a cheap phone. "You make it, Malik. For your dad." Her words trembled, heavy with exhaustion. His father's heart gave out when First Capital foreclosed their home in 2008, a casualty of their greed. His mother worked 3 jobs, cleaning houses, stocking shelves, sewing late into the night to keep Malik in school. Her hands, calloused and raw, smelled of bleach and thread, folding laundry at 3 a.m. In a fridge shopping. Her 3rd job, waitressing at a diner, left her smelling of grease, her apron stained with ketchup, her feet swollen from standing 12-hour shifts. Her eyes, red from sleepless nights, still shone with hope. Malik clutched the phone tighter, the plastic creaking, promising her he'd make it. He'd clawed his way to an Ivy League scholarship, his nights a blur of code and coffee. He built a risk model that landed him on Forbes 30, under 30, a shining star at First Capital. They hired him to design their loan system, a labyrinth of code to track every transaction. He'd warned them subprime loans would crash the market, bury families like his. The boardroom went silent, then erupted in laughter. "Stick to code, kid," they said, their voices dripping with Ivy League arrogance. Their cufflinks glinted under fluorescent lights, their sneers louder than his data. When the 2008 crisis hit, his model was proven right. The system collapse was inevitable, but they erased his name from every report, fired him for cultural misalignment. They took his work. They took his pride. They took his future. Malik's memory sharpened, the pain raw. His mother's face flashed before him, exhausted, signing away their home. Her pen shook, ink smudging on the foreclosure papers. The auctioneer's gavel slammed down, a hollow thud echoing in their empty living room. The damp cardboard of their belongings sat on the curb, soaked by rain, the smell of mildew clinging to his father's toolbox, abandoned on the porch. His mother's voice broke as she whispered, "We'll be okay, Malik." But they weren't. The injustice burned in his chest. He saw his father's hands, rough from years of labor, now still in a hospital bed. He saw his mother's apron, stained with sweat, hanging on a broken hook. He saw himself, erased, his name scrubbed from history by men in suits who never knew hunger. Malik blinked. Back in the bank's lobby. The mop was in his hands, its handle worn smooth. The bleach stung his palms, a bitter reminder of every door slammed shut. But now, it was a weapon. Every stroke cleaned their floors and sharpened his plan. He saw his mother's hands again, folding laundry in the dark, her fingers trembling but unyielding. He heard his father's laugh, faint, from a summer long gone, before the bank took everything. He felt the weight of his own erasure, the sting of their laughter still fresh. No more. He gripped the mop tighter, his knuckles whitening. This time, he wouldn't be erased. This time, he'd make them pay. The mop wasn't just a tool, it was his sword, and their empire would bleed. Malik stood before an ATM in the bank's west wing, the machine's hum blending with the faint buzz of fluorescent lights. The air smelled of metal and dust, a cold reminder of the bank's hollow core. His fingers, steady but calloused from years of mopping, plugged a hidden USB drive into a port no one ever checked. The screen flickered, green code scrolling his code, written 8 years ago, still unpatched, still alive. It was the same code he'd built as a young prodigy, the same code First Capital had stolen and buried. But now, it was his weapon. He typed 3 commands, each keystroke deliberate, each tap a quiet rebellion. The system began logging every transaction over $10, every altered credit score, every deleted email. The data streamed to a ghost server in a Brooklyn basement, its address known only to him. His face, lit by the screen's glow, was calm but unyielding. The faint scar above his brow catching the light a mark from the day he'd moved his family's belongings to the curb in 2008. The screen blinked, but the truth was waking up. The air grew colder, the hum of the ATM a heartbeat in the dark, counting down to chaos. Malik's jaw tightened. He wasn't just hacking a system, he was hacking injustice itself. Outside, the city roared, horns blaring, sirens wailing, life pulsing through the streets. Inside, the bank slept, its secrets humming through wires Malik had laid long ago. The cameras didn't see him, their lenses blind to the janitor in the shadows. The guards didn't notice, their footsteps echoing down another hall. But the system did. It whispered back, line by line, truth by truth, revealing every lie Bryce had buried, every scam Carl had orchestrated, every theft Grant had planned. Malik's heart pounded, his fingers trembling slightly as he watched the data pour in. Every transaction, every fraud, every betrayal. The bank thought it was untouchable, but Malik was its reckoning. He planted a second device, a tiny tracker beneath the ATM, its signal pulsing to his server, a silent net to catch their every move. He unplugged the drive, the faint click echoing in the empty wing. He slipped it into his jumpsuit, the fabric rough against his skin, and pushed his mop forward, its wheels squeaking softly. The game was on. He moved toward the lobby, his steps measured, his mind racing. The board meeting was tomorrow. Bryce, Carl, and Grant would be there, their arrogance on full display. But so would Malik. He'd face them, not as a janitor, but as the man who'd torn their empire apart. The mop scraped the floor, a steady rhythm. But inside, Malik burned with empowerment. He was ready. The system wouldn't just crack, it would shatter. The boardroom on the 15th floor of First Capital Bank buzzed with tension. Malik stood at the far end, his janitor's uniform stark against the polished suits of the board. Bryce sat at the head of the table, his arms crossed, his smirk faint. Carl and Grant flanked him, their faces unreadable. The chairman? Mr. Hargrove adjusted his glasses. This better be worth our time, Mr. Jackson. Malik nodded once, his voice steady. It will be. He held his phone in his hand, the weight of every recording, every photo, every email heavy in his grip. The board waited. The air was thick. Malik stepped forward, his movements deliberate. He had waited for this moment, planned for it. Every lie had led to this. I've worked here for 5 years, he began, his voice low but clear. I've cleaned your floors. I've emptied your trash. But I've also listened to. Bryce shifted in his seat, his smirk fading. Carl's eyes narrowed. Grant glanced at the door. Malik pressed play on his phone. Bryce's voice filled the room, smug and careless. Hide the loan defaults. Push them to next quarter. Blame the DEI hires. The boardroom went still. Hargrove's pen stopped midair. Malik let the recording play, but he wasn't done. He swiped to the next file. Carl's voice came through, cold and sharp. Amara's a liability. We'll pin the audit on her. A photo flashed on the screen, Carl and Grant laughing near the coffee machine, plotting to steal her bonus. The board murmured, Malik's eyes locked on Carl. You thought no one would hear you, he said. But I did. Carl's face turned red. He opened his mouth to speak, but Malik cut him off. Another swipe. Grant's voice now. Shelby and I, we're skimming the bonuses. Easy money. The board gasped. Grant's hands gripped the table, his knuckles white. Malik's silence was louder than their excuses. Malik turned to Hargrove. There's more, he said. He opened the emails he'd hacked from Bryce's account. Client X, foreclosure fraud, he read aloud. The screen showed Bryce's words push the foreclosure through. We'll take the property. Tell you what for a while, shorty or mates. Shelby's reply followed funds redirected to offshore account. The room erupted. Hargrove slammed his hand on the table. This is bank corruption, he shouted. Bryce stood, his face pale. This is a setup, he stammered. Malik didn't flinch. No, he said. This is the truth unveiled. Every client, every tear, every stolen home. He'd fought for them all. The boardroom doors opened. Security stepped in, followed by a reporter with a camera. Malik had called them Surintun. He had planned this. Every step, every move, every piece of evidence. He turned to the board, his voice steady. Amara didn't deserve your blame. Neither did the clients you cheated. Like Mrs. Carter. Like the mother who begged for an extension. He swiped to the video of Amara, her hands trembling as she handed Mrs. Carter the fraudulent bonds. Then the photo of the mother, tears in her eyes, her son clinging to her hand. The board watched in silence. Hargrove's face hardened. Bryce, Carl, Grant, you're done, he said. The live stream on X exploded. First Capital fraud trended. Comments flooding, expose them, justice now. The crowd outside roared, their chants shaking the walls. Bryce lunged forward, his voice a snarl. You're a janitor. You don't belong here. Malik stood his ground. He didn't speak, but his presence roared. The reporter's camera flashed, capturing Bryce's outburst. The board members stood, their voices rising. Get them out, Hargrove ordered. Security moved in, grabbing Bryce, Carl, and Grant. Carl's chair fell as he struggled. Grant's face turned gray, his hands shaking. Bryce shouted, You'll regret this, but no one listened. The boardroom doors slammed shut behind them. Malik stood still, his phone still in hand. The board turned to him, their eyes wide. Hargrove spoke first. Mr. Jackson, how long have you known Malik's voice was calm? Long enough. He stepped back, his silence a shield. The reporter approached, her voice eager. Mr. Jackson, you've exposed injustice on a massive scale. What's next? Malik looked at her, his eyes steady. Justice, he said. For everyone? The camera flashed again. The board murmured, some nodding, others whispering. Amara stood in the corner, her eyes red but bright. She mouthed, Thank you. Malik nodded once. The room settled. Hargrove turned to the board. We need an audit. Now, Winabe and Mr. Jackson, we need to talk about your role here. Malik didn't smile. He didn't speak. He just stood there, his presence undeniable. The system had cracked, and he had broken it wide open. This wasn't just a win for him. It was empowerment for every silent voice in the bank. Every teller, every client, every unseen hero. The truth had spoken, and it wouldn't be silenced again. Vale opened his safe at dawn, his hands trembling as he pulled out the USB and Malik's note. The note was simple, written in sharp, deliberate strokes. You built this on lies. Now watch it fall. He plugged the USB into his laptop, his office dim, the city skyline gray beyond the glass. The screen lit up data poured out every altered log, every forged credit score, every email ordering creative accounting. It uploaded automatically to the main server, unstoppable, irreversible. Vale's coffee cup slipped from his hand, shattering on the floor with a sharp crack. The sound echoed, but the truth was louder. He stumbled back, his chair scraping the hardwood, his breath ragged. The truth unveiled stared back at him, undeniable, unescapable. In the boardroom, chaos erupted. Shelby Crane, a senior manager, stood, her voice trembling as she clutched her files. I'll testify, she blurted, her eyes darting to the exit. I didn't sign off on the pension scheme. Her confession sparked a fire. 2 more VPs, Daniels and Harper, followed, each spilling secrets to save themselves. Daniels pointed at Bryce, his voice shaking. He ordered the fake loans. I have emails. Harper nodded, sweat beading on his forehead. Carl knew. He doctored the audits. The dominoes fell, one by one, as the board scrambled to contain the damage. Bryce lunged from his seat, his face red. Lies, all of this is a setup, but no one listened. The boardroom doors opened, and security stepped in, their boots heavy on the polished floor. Jameson Reed, the majority shareholder, took the podium, his presence commanding the room. All senior leadership steps down. Effective now, he declared, his voice cold, cutting through the chaos. We audit everything, every loan, every deal, every lie. The crowd roared, small shareholders chanting for justice, their voices a wave of fury. The board, cornered by X's trending hashtags, First Capital Fraud, Justice for Clients, voted to comply. Reed turned to Bryce, Carl, and Grant, his eyes steel. You're done, he said. Security grabbed Bryce, his arms flailing as he shouted, You can't do this. Carl's face turned gray, his hands shaking as he was escorted out. Grant tried to slip away, but a guard blocked the door, his badge gleaming. The room watched in silence, but the weight of their downfall was deafening. Outside, a crowd gathered clients, retirees, families on the bank's marble steps. An 87-year-old woman, her hands clutching a foreclosure notice from 2016, stood trembling in the morning chill. Her scarf slipped as she whispered, "They took my home, my memories." Elsie, reinstated that morning as a senior teller, met her at the door, her eyes soft but fierce. She guided the woman to a VIP room, her hand steady on the woman's shoulder. "We'll fix this," Elsie said, her voice a promise. A reporter snapped a photo Elsie's hand on the woman's shoulder, the woman's eyes brimming with hope. The image spread across X, a symbol of reckoning, tagged with bank redemption. The crowd cheered, their voices rising, their signs demanding justice. Elsie turned to another client, a single father with a foreclosure notice from 2017, his hands shaking as he clutched his daughter's photo. "We'll get your home back," Elsie promised, her voice steady, her resolve unshaken. The crowd outside cheered, but Elsie felt the weight of every life they'd rebuild. Inside, the boardroom fallout continued. Reed called for a press conference, his voice broadcast live on X. "First Capital will repay every client," he announced, his words sharp. "We'll rebuild trust, or we'll close for good." The crowd outside roared louder, their chants a tidal wave. Bryce, Carl, and Grant were led out in handcuffs, their faces pale, their suits wrinkled. A live stream captured Bryce's snarl. "This isn't over," but the comments flooded in. Justice served and the injustice. The hashtag First Capital Fraud trended worldwide, exposing every lie, every betrayal. The bank's stock plummeted, a system collapsed in real time. Elsie returned to her desk, her hands steady as she opened a drawer. Inside was Malik's note, left before he vanished. "Keep the bank, if you can, or burn it down, like I did." She folded it carefully, her fingers brushing the paper. She looked out at the crowd, their faces a mix of anger and hope. A young teller, Jay, approached, his voice low. "They're saying Malik's a hero, that he empowered us all." Elsie nodded, her eyes distant. "He did," she said. She turned back to her work, her movements steady, her resolve unshaken. The bank would rise, or it would fall, but the truth would never be buried again. Elsie stood in her new office on the 10th floor of First Capital Bank, her nameplate gleaming under the soft light ethics compliance lead. The bank's halls were quieter now, the air less heavy with secrets. She adjusted her blazer, her movements steady, her resolve unshaken. She had launched a nationwide training program: ethics, transparency, accountability for every employee, from tellers to branch managers. In a conference room downstairs, managers sat in rows, their laptops open, their screens flashing yellow when data strayed from the truth. The code was Malik's, still running, still watching, a silent guardian left behind. Elsie watched from the back of the room, her arms crossed, her eyes sharp. "No more lies," she whispered to herself, her voice a promise. In her office, a battered laptop sat on a shelf, its screen glowing with lines of code from 2008. It was Malik's, left behind like a sentinel after he vanished. When a manager fudged a number in a loan report, the screen blinked a warning, a red pulse cutting through the dim light. Elsie's breath caught. "He's still here," she whispered, her fingers brushing the keyboard, the plastic cool under her touch. The laptop hummed, its fan whirring softly, a reminder of Malik's fight. It wasn't just a machine. It was a symbol of truth, a piece of his legacy that refused to be silenced. She turned back to her desk, her hands steady as she reviewed the day's reports. The bank was changing one honest step at a time. Across the city, clients received settlements, homes returned, debts erased, lives rebuilt. The 87-year-old woman, Mrs. Harper, moved back into her brownstone, her grandson's laughter echoing through the halls as he ran across the creaky wooden floors. She stood at the window, her hands clutching a photo of her late husband, her eyes bright with tears of joy. "We're home," she whispered, her voice trembling. Elsie had overseen the settlement herself, ensuring every penny was returned. The woman's story spread on X, her photo tagged with First Capital Redemption, a beacon of hope for thousands. Other clients followed families who'd lost everything in 2016, single mothers who'd begged for extensions, retirees who trusted the bank with their savings. A single father, his home returned after years of struggle, hugged his daughter in the lobby, his voice breaking. "We're back," he said. Elsie watched, her heart full, her hands steady as she handed him the keys. Each settlement was a brick in the bank's new foundation, a foundation built on redemption. In the bank's lobby, a new sign hung above the entrance. Transparency first. Employees wore pins with the same slogan, their smiles genuine as they greeted clients. Tellers like Jay, once fearful of speaking up, now led ethics workshops, their voices steady, their confidence a quiet empowerment. Jay stood at the front of a room, his hands steady as he spoke to new tellers. "We report what's right, not what's easy," he said, his voice firm. Another teller, Lisa, nodded, her eyes bright. "Malik showed us how," she added, her voice soft but sure. They worked together now, sharing tips to spot fraud, their laughter filling the break room as they reviewed client files. Elsie watched from her office window, her eyes tracing the crowd below. A young teller handed a client a settlement check, her hands steady, her smile wide. The client, a father with 2 children, hugged his kids tight, his shoulders shaking with relief. Elsie's chest warmed. This was what Malik had fought for. This was why she stayed. On her wall, Elsie hung a single photo, Malik's mop, leaning against a wall in the janitor's closet, its handle worn but unbroken. The wood was scratched, the fibers frayed, but it stood tall, a silent testament to every unseen battle Malik had fought. She stepped back, her eyes lingering on the image, but her heart felt his presence. The mop wasn't just a tool. It was a symbol of resilience, of quiet rebellion, of a man who'd broken a system with nothing but his will. Elsie touched the frame, her fingers gentle, her resolve firm. "You did it, Malik," she whispered. The bank was changing. The truth was free. Every Monday, Elsie met with a small group of employees, tellers, janitors, security guards in the training room. She called it the Truth First Initiative, a program to teach accountability, to listen to the unheard. She handed out notebooks, her voice soft but firm. "Write one honest thing you see each day," she said. "That's how we start." The employees nodded, their eyes bright, their hands eager. Jay, now a team lead, spoke up. "Malik gave us a voice," he said, his voice steady. "Now we use it." Elsie smiled, her heart full. The room buzzed with quiet determination, the kind that rebuilt trust, one honest word at a time. By month's end, First Capital's reputation began to shift. Posts praised the bank's new path, though some whispered of the janitor who started it all. A viral thread read, "First Capital isn't just a bank. Now it's a movement. Truth first." Elsie read the comments late at night, her office quiet, the city lights flickering outside. She leaned back in her chair, her hands resting on Malik's laptop. The screen blinked once a manager in another branch had flagged a loan discrepancy. Elsie smiled faintly. The system worked. Malik's system worked. The bank would never be the same, and neither would she. Malik's shadow lingered not in the hall, but in every honest choice they'd make. Stay until the end. The twist will redefine what redemption truly means. If you witnessed injustice like this, what would you do? Comment below. Subscribe to Unveiled Wealth, where kindness sparks redemption and silence breaks power. Malik moved through the bank unseen, his mop a silent witness to a system built on lies. He was erased once, a young genius who dared to speak the truth, but they laughed him out of their boardroom. They thought he'd stay down. They thought he'd break. They thought wrong. He returned not with a suit, not with a title, but with a plan. Every swipe of his mop uncovered a truth. Every whisper he caught built a case. Every lie he recorded became a weapon. And when the system crumbled, it wasn't with a shout, but with a single USB, a single note, a single man who refused to stay buried. Malik didn't just expose injustice, he shattered it. He didn't just fight for himself, he fought for Amara, for Mrs. Carter, for every client who'd begged for mercy and found none. His silence broke their power, and his truth sparked a redemption that echoed far beyond the bank's walls. What would you do if you held the key to justice? Would you walk away, or would you fight? Imagine standing in Malik's shoes, your hands gripping the evidence, your heart pounding with the weight of every wrong you've seen. Would you let the lies win, or would you make them pay? Malik chose to fight. He chose to stand. He chose to be the voice for those who'd been silenced. And in doing so, he gave empowerment to every unseen hero, every quiet warrior, every person who'd ever been told they didn't matter. His mop wasn't just a tool. It was a symbol of resilience, of defiance, of a man who turned their arrogance into ashes. Now it's your turn to take a stand. If you witnessed an injustice like this, what would you do? Would you speak up, like Malik? Would you gather the evidence, piece by piece, until the truth could no longer be ignored? Or would you wait for someone else to fix it? Share your thoughts below. We're listening. Your voice matters. Your story matters. And at Unveiled Wealth, we're here to amplify it. Join us now, subscribe to Unveiled Wealth today, and dive into stories where the silenced rise, where the overlooked triumph, where kindness sparks a revolution. Don't miss out on tales that cut through the noise. Tales where the truth doesn't just whisper, it roars. Hit that subscribe button. Become part of our movement, and let's break the silence together. Unveiled Wealth isn't just a channel, it's a call to action. Will you answer? Because the next story might be yours, waiting to roar.